An AI just found thousands of security flaws that the world's best human hackers missed for almost 2 decades. It autonomously cracked a bug hidden in FreeBSD for 17 years that nobody, not security researchers, not government agencies, not anyone ever spotted. And the company that built it? Well, Anthropic, they decided that it is too dangerous for you to get your hands on. 9 of the biggest companies in the world got access, but you don't. So let me explain what Project Glasswing is and why every single big tech company is freaking out right now. On April 7th, Anthropic launched Project Glasswing, a cybersecurity initiative built on their unreleased frontier model, Claude Mythos Preview. Mythos is the model everyone's been whispering about, the one that supposedly outperforms every other AI on every benchmark that matters. Anthropic pointed at every major operating system, just code that real auditors, real security researchers have been trying to crack for decades, and just in a matter of days, it produced thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities. For context, a single zero-day vulnerability is like a kind of finding that can make a security researcher's entire year, or his entire decade, or his entire career, depending on which platform he finds it on. And this AI was able to find thousands in a freaking snap. Thousands. Where one could just make a career, it found thousands. The most shocking example is a bug found, just say hidden, in FreeBSD. One of the most widely deployed operating systems in the world. FreeBSD runs on Netflix servers, runs on PlayStations. It runs a huge chunk of the internet's backend. And inside of that code base, what you call a remote code execution vulnerability, logged as CVE 2026-4747. Now, that bug had been sitting in there for 17 years, and researchers at Apple, at government agencies, at every major security firm, they've all been looking at this FreeBSD. In the past few decades, nobody found it. And you want to hear the scary part? Claude Mythos didn't just find it, it autonomously exploited it. It walked through the exact steps that a real attacker would go through, identified the flaw, built the exploit, and executed it without needing any human whatsoever. But so here's where it gets interesting. Anthropic, being the smartasses that they are, decided that this stuff was too dangerous for the public to have access to. You're not getting access not now, and perhaps not ever. They restricted it to only 9 partners: Amazon Web Services, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan's Chase, Nvidia, and Microsoft. So that's a pretty solid list, huh? 3 of the biggest cloud providers on earth. One company that makes the chips every single AI is trained on. Also, in there got the biggest bag of America. We've got a cybersecurity giant. Basically, the companies that already will be most exposed to all this, they got access to it. And I kind of think this is for the better. Simon Wilson, one of the most respected voices in AI, also recently said that this restricted release was, quote, necessary. And it's, to me, kind of interesting when you get a guy that's been talking about open models for such a long time, he's been advocating for them, him saying that a closed off, specific access, closed off environment is necessary here. Well, that's where I, kind of look twice. And really, when you start taking a look at every blog, every Reddit post, places where people talk about this, you can see the majority of people are really scared for what this may mean. Because also, me thinking about it, I believe this is one of the first times where publicly a company has now stated that their AI is too good for the public to have, and that they have something better, but the people just don't have access to it. It seemed to always been a matter of, we're trying to make it as good as possible so we can get more people to subscribe and pay. But these guys made something so good that they had to gatekeep it. Right now, Mythos was just used as a defense mechanism, right? Some of these massive companies are using it mostly internally or just by testing it out in a white hat fashion, let's call it. They're trying to make sure that this AI can't be used for bad. But the real scary thing just comes when it's used in offense. And now, I've been in the tech, crypto, AI space for a long time. This is my daily bread and butter for an extremely long amount of time. And one thing I can tell you, if you've been on the internet for a while, you realize that it was all built by humans in mostly a little bit of a stupid fashion. Yes, it's been changed throughout time, but there are still a ton of flaws. Protocols, websites get hacked all the time, and you gotta realize that what you think is solid, like an email, was still created by humans. And so, for other humans to crack Gmail, Google, etc., that's tough. But if you get the idea that with an offensive AI, this super good AI with potentially the combination of letting multiple different AIs work together and work at something really, really hard with all their ability, at some point it's going to become too good for a human to defend against, unless they're also using AI to defend against it, which in turn they all will, but in this case we're seeing right here, they need some time to prepare. A lot of people are not getting that most of the exploits out there, of which there are a ton because, well, they were built by humans, will eventually found with AI, if not updated first with some sort of AI. Every single blind spot that's out there is eventually going to be found because these models are just getting too good for humans to defend against, like I said, unless they've also got AI. Anyway, that is exactly why that partner list that I just showed you matters so much. What they're basically doing is putting up a race, all right? They're trying to race to patch the internet against these offensive, or let's call them equivalent sort of AIs that are most likely coming up from Google, from OpenAI. None of these companies are sitting still. Anthropic was able to make a massive leap. They realized, hey, if we don't get more companies together to combat this in the near future, that's a big problem. And here's another crazy food for thought little point. There's a ton of AI companies out there that you and I have most likely never heard of, that most likely have already gotten pretty far in building something out there, and there's a very good chance that some of the most recent exploits, like for example, we're hearing something new now with Lovable, we're seeing something new now with Vercel, all right, all these different platforms getting hacked, breached, or something happening. It could be that there are some models out there that have already been optimized so much with, again, the help of AI to find specific vulnerabilities. Well, and again, if they're not releasing it to the public, who's going to know if it was a human or AI hacking? I think eventually AI will again get so good, or perhaps with Mythos, to be able to find out that it was an AI that was able to find this vulnerability. But again, all that takes time. And again, the better that technology becomes in detecting it, the worse it is also, because the offense is also going to be so much more heavy. So, how exactly do we prevent ourselves from falling the victim to all these things? Now, first of all, make sure you press that like button. That's your first little measure. That was cringy. But anyway, first of all, make sure you update everything, all right? I've always have this little Chrome button, update your Chrome, etc. You should never have your systems running on very, very old software unless they're gated. And what I mean with that is a lot of people actually buy these older devices because they do not get any updates anymore. Well, if they were golden back then and they don't have any more access to newer things, sometimes it's actually the safest setup. But for most people using this for the day-to-day lives, like the computer, phone, etc., it is actually wisest to update to newer firmware, because very often these bugs that were in there get patched over time. And you have to understand, Apple has access to this, Microsoft has access to this, you don't, and most hackers out there don't have it as well. So most likely they're trying to prevent a lot of these exploits by, well, making you update right now. But anyway, a secondary part is to make sure you already understand in the back of your head, you're going to need to change a lot of your passwords just to make sure they're not the same everywhere, and you're going to want to have 2FA. Just assume that there'll be many different leaks from different websites, not because of your fault, but because the website was not updating themselves well enough against these breaches in the near future. And so they have one password, one set of data from one website that, well, you don't want it to go out there, right? Or at least it will most likely get out there, but then at least they can't hack all your different other websites. Also, one thing a lot of people like to do is use their phone, their SMS as a two-factor authentication. Don't do that. And also pay close attention to the companies I mentioned earlier that are on this Claude Mythos list, because those companies are most likely your most solid, trusted lines, as they'll probably have the most patched, perfectly flat, perfect, nice infrastructure. And I personally think they'll be expanding this list in the near future to more companies that, again, can be trusted with this sort of tech. And by that logic, perhaps try to stay with companies that have access to this, or have close connections, or mostly use companies that have access to this, because I think that's your best shot at not getting your data out there leaked. But it's really crazy to think that this is basically the end of an era. Because if you zoom out for a sec, the entire history of software, offense and defense, they've always been like kind of balanced. Smart humans, writing that code, where on the other side you had smart humans trying to combat it at every chance they got. But it was mostly a slow war that took many months and many years. Now Project Glasswing changes all of that. It's the moment that the balance broke, because both sides of this war right now are machine. And machines move at machine speed. So the next wave of cybersecurity stuff is all going to be AI versus AI. Humans, thrown out the window. And really, when you think about it, it's like an arms race, Is AI on the defense side gonna be better, quicker than AI on the offensive side? And as of this point, Anthropic kind of put the defense up there by a good shot, right? But we know many companies out there are most likely also looking for the opposite side, because, well, if you're able to build that, you're pretty much extremely rich straight out the bat, and we should always assume that not everybody in the world is a good actor. Even though what we're hearing right now is mostly defense, it is mostly good, just keep in the back of your head, this is most likely just a matter of time before we see some sort of announcements that some other platform has gotten to some extremely smart sort of model, and at that point it's just a matter of weeks. Actually, as of this point, it's already kind of like a matter of weeks or some short months before some other company gets a breakthrough, and it's kind of scary to think about. But yeah, guys, if you want me to break down more AI stories as they come out, or give some updates on how I am personally running my agents or how I am profiting from AI right now, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and tomorrow, I'll be back with another very interesting update, so make sure you stay tuned as I post on this channel every single day, and I'll see you guys again in another video tomorrow.